In the last couple of sections, we've looked at a couple of different ways of updating a deployment. So we understand that we can change the number of replicas, and we can change, say, the container port, or even the image that is used by this deployment whenever it is creating a pod. But one thing that we haven't quite looked at is how we can update a deployment when a new version of an image becomes available. So I want you to imagine for a second that maybe you and I go off to our multi-worker project, and maybe we make an update to that image, and then we push the image up to Docker Hub. How would we somehow get our deployment to pull down that latest version and recreate all of our pods using that latest version? I want to look into that a little bit inside this section. Now, let's take a look at a diagram that's going to explain the series of changes we're going to make to our project to kind of simulate updating an image and kind of simulate how we would update a deployment to accommodate for that updated image. Okay, so first off, we're going to update our deployment, and we're going to change it to use the multi-client image again. The only reason that we're going to change it to use multi-client is that it gives us something to look at inside the browser. And so it makes it really easy to verify that our pods are running the correct version of an image. After that, we're then going to go back over to the source code for our multi-client project. We're going to make a change to that project. We're going to rebuild the image and then push the image up to Docker Hub. So that's going to simulate a very real deployment or a very real change to an application. All the time when you're using Kubernetes and all this container stuff, you're going to want to change an image, and you're going to want to make sure that the latest version of that image eventually gets deployed onto your Kubernetes cluster. After we push that changed image up to Docker Hub, we're then going to somehow get our deployment to recreate all of its pods with that latest version of multi-client that you and I create. So let's get to it. Step number 1 is going to be to change our deployment to use multi-client again. So inside of my code editor, I'm going to find the client deployment.yaml file. We're going to make a couple changes in here. The first thing I'm going to do is reduce the number of replicas down to 1. So we're just going to run 1 replica all by itself. That's just going to make it a little bit easier for testing purposes so that we can get a better idea of when that single pod is being updated or recreated or whatever it might be. Next up, we're going to change our image right here. So instead of multi-worker, we're going to get multi-client. And then one other thing that I want to do on the image right here, besides putting on multi-client, is I want to make sure that we also update the port that is exposed or forwarded on that image. So a container port, rather than 999, we're going to change that back to 3000 like so. Because you remember, that is the port that is exposed, or that Nginx inside the multi-client image is going to listen on. Okay, so that looks good. Let's now take these changes. I'm going to save this file, and then I'm going to apply this new configuration to our Kubernetes cluster. So back at my terminal, I'll do a kubectl apply client deployment.yaml. So I'm going to make that change, and then we will want to very quickly test this out inside the browser and make sure that we can access that newly created container that's inside of that new pod. So remember, anytime that we want to access our app inside the browser, we need to get our Minikube IP with the Minikube IP command. I'll copy the IP address, then we'll go back over to our browser. I'll paste in that IP, and remember, we set up that service to listen on port 31515. So I'll do :31515. And then I see our application appear. Okay, so that's easy enough. Let's take a pause right now. When we come back to the next section, we're going to make an update to the multi-client image, and then we're going to push it up to Docker Hub. So quick pause, and I'll see you in just a minute.